I get a show of hands? Raise your hand if you speak more than one language. Keep your hands up if English is not your first language. Keep your hands up if you thought English was easy to learn. Yeah, I thought so. So at the moment, English is the global language. You pretty much have to speak it in order to interact with the global community at large, mostly because of colonialism. But it almost wasn't. The global language was almost a language called Esperanto, and this is the flag of the language, the green star. But it's not, it's English. And unfortunately, English is probably about the worst pick that the world could have gone through for the global language. Just having a look at this. English is a difficult language, but it can be understood through tough, thorough thought, though. These words all look very similar. They're all pronounced very differently. So there are a lot of problems with English, mostly due to its amalgamation of different languages, being invaded by other things, invading other things. Everything merges, all the rules, they were consistent in their own languages for the most part. They come together in English. And it's all just all around a bad time. In fact, English is spelling is so complicated that we have literally invented competitions for who can memorize the most amount of spelled words, called spelling bees. And also, English has a lot of vowels. You might think it has 5 or 6, depending on whether you count Y, but it actually has about 12, depending on your accent. So a lot of languages typically only have about 5. 5 is the average. So for people learning English and having to learn about double the amount of vowels and learning how to distinguish between them all, it's not a great time. So on the other hand, we have Esperanto. Esperanto is almost completely regular. So I've just compared the English, French, and Esperanto words for I know. So you can see with English, not great. French, I'm not sure entirely what's going on. I didn't learn French, but it doesn't look pretty. Sorry to any French speakers out there. And then on the other hand, we have Esperanto, and all the verbs. Look, you just need to learn one verb, past tense. You swap the thing around a bit, but it's a lot more consistent. And that makes it a lot easier to learn. In fact, Esperanto teaches French better than French does. And the reason for this, there have been experiments in primary schools where they've gotten one set of kids. They've taught the kids French for the whole year. They've got another set of kids, and they taught them Esperanto for the first half of the year, and then French for the second half. And that second group that learned Esperanto first actually learned a lot more. And the reason is because of something like this. Raise your hand if you recognize this instrument. You should all. This is the recorder. You might have learned it at primary school. Recorders aren't typically played in, grand symphonic orchestras or anything like that. In fact, most people's experience of recorders are probably going to be fairly unpleasant, as is understandable when there's like 35-year-olds all trying to make a sound, a good sound that is. But yeah, Esperanto has kind of been treated like this. It's a language that's easy to learn, and then once you kind of get an idea of how to learn a different language, then you can move on to ones that have more rules and exceptions to rules and things that kind of are a bit trickier and have more things in the way. So yeah, Esperanto was invented by this man. He's called Zamenhof, when he was quite a young adult, actually. It was invented in Białystok, which is a place in Poland that had 4 distinct groups in it. There was Russians there were Polish people, there were Germans, there were Jews. Dr. Esperanto, as he is called, is also a Jew. And they did not get on well, to put it plainly. And his thought was, I'm not seeing much brotherhood here, but maybe if I created a way that people could understand each other better, then they could communicate better and get on and cooperate better. Hence, he invented the language Esperanto. And because he's from Europe, it has words from Greek, it has words from Russian, or other Slavic languages, as well as a lot of Romance languages such as French, Spanish, Italian, and a bit of German too. So I'm sure I have you all convinced Esperanto is a wonderful language, we should all learn it. Why isn't everyone speaking this? This is part of the reason. So Esperanto was invented in 1887, and it started getting some traction. But then the 20th century happened. Esperanto was persecuted a lot. Hitler actually pointed out specifically in his book Mein Kampf, saying that it was a Jewish plot for world domination, because Zamenhof was Jewish. There are a lot of other countries that did not like Esperanto. France at one point vetoed its adoption at a vote in the League of Nations. They also banned speaking of Esperanto in their schools. And pretty much any sort of heavily nationalist country, no matter what side of the political spectrum it claims to be on, persecuted Esperanto. The Soviets persecuted them, Nazi Germany, Francoist Spain. But interestingly, not Mussolini, because he said it sounded close enough to Italian, so we take the win, I suppose. But regardless of all of this, regardless of what sort of authoritarian regime they were, they all saw Esperanto as a threat, because Esperanto has this message of brotherhood, of unity. It's not just a language that's simple to learn, but it has a message behind it that says, no, we can learn to understand each other and unite each other and, go towards a common goal. And I believe because of the strength of that message, it still persists to this day. The speakers are in about hundreds of thousands globally, and there's communities all over the world, even in China where it's known as the world language. There are also services like Passport de Servo, which is kind of like a free Airbnb, but you don't have to pay. But you do have to speak Esperanto. And also it's on Duolingo, which is really nice. It's probably one of the things propping up the community. It's how I learned the language. So yeah, it still persists to this day. So in a place like Australia and New Zealand, there isn't as much as an obvious need for it. In Europe, you've got people speaking a lot of different languages. English is pretty much de facto in Australia and New Zealand. So when you're not sure how to continue learning the language, you look for odd ways to do it. This is a Minecraft mod. It is called the Endergetic Expansion. And it has a couple of weird alien plants in it, like the one on the left. These are supposed to be like weird floating balloon-like plants. And the name for them in the mod is the Bolloom, combining the word balloon and bloom. Translating puns into different languages is very difficult, but we eventually landed on floro, meaning flower, and flossi, meaning float, and got florso. And that sort of thing gives you a lot more kind of practical, hands-on understanding of the language, as well as things like translating songs, which is a whole different kettle of fish. So despite there being less of a need for Esperanto, practically speaking, there was still a really big experience that I had around about a year ago. Someone from Austria who didn't speak very good English came to one of our regular cafe meetups. And he couldn't speak very good English, I couldn't speak Austrian or whatever he spoke, but we could both speak Esperanto, and that was a defining moment for me, because I'm like, I'm actually using this language for its intended purpose, even though I'm not in Europe or anywhere else. There were also congresses. These are basically immersion camps that last for about a week. This is the most recent one from the start of this year in Adelaide, Australia. And we spoke a lot of Esperanto. And as you can see, there's a range of different people here, different ages, different backgrounds. But we were all united by this shared purpose. And even though I knew barely any of them at the start, they still felt like a family, because we all knew that we were there for the same purpose. We were curious, we wanted to understand each other, we wanted to listen to each other, we wanted to express ourselves. So after that, when you are practicing a language a lot, you tend to get very tired, which I did, especially by the end. But I also started dreaming in Esperanto. And if you've ever learned a new language, you know that's the point where you've made it. So yeah, this philosophy of unity, of brotherhood, is the thing I believe that sets Esperanto apart from other language experiments, most other constructed languages as they're called. Because it's not just an experiment, it's an ideology. We want to unite people. And that, I think, is what gets people interested and what keeps people in the community. And I think this message can teach us a lot about how we communicate and how we seek to understand and listen and express ourselves. So just before I finish, I thought I'd teach you a little bit of the language. So I'll just go through it. So this is "Gis la revido." It means until the reviewing. It's kind of like saying "see you later." We've got some kind of Englishy phonetics down the bottom. So let's go through the words one by one. Can you say "gis"? Nice. Can you say "la"? La. Can you say "revido"? Revido. Nice. Okay. So if we put that all together, we get "gis la revido." Gis la revido. Gis la revido. Thank you very much.